You know that feeling, right? When
Yeah.
you're really pushing yourself for something. Could be at the gym, a big project at work, maybe just sticking with a new habit. That drive, that push to get better.
Yeah, we all know it. And there's actually a term for that consistent striving, especially when you're comparing yourself or trying to meet some standard. It's called achievement motivation.
Achievement motivation. Oh,
And one of our sources points out that this drive, it really starts forming early on. It shapes how we see ourselves, our values, what we believe we can actually do.
okay, let's really dig into this then, because today isn't just about that, general feeling of ambition. We've got some really fascinating research looking at this from all sorts of angles.
Right. We're going to look at how it shows up in schools, the power of setting specific goals, even things like mindfulness at work and personal growth.
So the idea is to pull out the key stuff, yeah, about achievement motivation, goals, well-being, kind of connect the dots for you without getting lost in all the academic jargon.
Exactly. A shortcut to understanding how these pieces fit together.
Okay, good. So let's start where a lot of this drive gets tested first, school. We have a study here from the Golpura district of Assam. Look at high school students.
That's the one. Yeah, they wanted to see how achievement motivation affects academic performance. They looked specifically at students from tribal and non-tribal communities.
And other factors, too.
Yep. Also considered gender, boys versus girls, and location, like urban or rural settings. They surveyed about 200 ninth graders.
So what jumped out? Any big differences between these groups in terms of their motivation levels?
Well, interestingly, not really between tribal and non-tribal students on average. Same for boys and girls. Their achievement motivation levels were pretty similar.
Huh.
But the urban students, they showed significantly higher achievement motivation compared to the rural students. That was a clear difference.
Okay, now here's where I bet it gets complicated.
Yeah.
Did having higher motivation actually mean getting better grades?
Yeah, that's where it gets nuanced. When they looked at all the students together, there wasn't a strong, clear link between overall achievement motivation and their academic results.
Really? So more motivation didn't automatically equal better grades for everyone?
Not across the board, no. But when they broke it down into those subgroups, they did find a positive link between achievement motivation and grades for the non-tribal students, for the girls, and for both urban and rural students when analyzed separately.
But not for everyone.
Right. No significant link found for the tribal students or for the boys in this particular study.
Wow, that's a real mix. And the study mentioned something about the tribal students specifically, even though the average was okay.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Even though the average score for tribal students fell in the average range for motivation, there was a large number within that group who actually had very low levels.
So the average kind of hid that detail.
Exactly. It shows you have to be careful with averages. There might be specific challenges or factors affecting a subgroup. And, the researchers did note that other studies have had conflicting results, too. Some find that link between motivation and grades. Others don't. It's complex.
So for, say, parents or teachers listening, what's the main takeaway from this school study?
I think the big message is how crucial it is to nurture that achievement motivation early on. Understanding how to foster it from a young age can really set students up for better academic careers later. It's foundational.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift from the school setting to something maybe more directly applicable for everyone listening. Setting goals. We've got a study here looking at goal setting in elementary school math.
Yeah, and it really backs up what researchers like Locke and Latham have been saying for ages. Setting specific academic goals. Super effective. Much better than just telling kids, do your best.
Right. I've heard that do your best isn't actually that helpful. Why is setting a specific goal so much more powerful?
Well, it works on a few levels. It boosts motivation, obviously. It also increases a student's belief in their own ability, their self-efficacy, and it helps them learn to manage their own learning process, which is self-regulation.
So a goal isn't just a wish. It's specific, measurable.
Exactly. You identify what you want to accomplish, figure out how you'll measure it, set out the actions, put a timeline on it.
And I guess actually hitting those smaller goals builds momentum, right? Keeps you going.
Absolutely. Achieving a goal reinforces that feeling of competence, builds that self-efficacy, and getting feedback along the way is key too. It shows your effort is making a difference.
So this study looked at third and fourth graders doing math. What exactly were they testing?
They wanted to see if goal setting affected, well, first, their motivation for math, second, their confidence in math, and third, specifically, their fluency and accuracy with multiplication facts. You know, those times tables that can trip kids up.
Yeah, definitely. So how did they set it up?
Pretty straightforward, actually. They had an experimental group where the kids set their own goals for mastering multiplication facts and tracked how they did on regular practice tests.
Okay.
Then there was a comparison group. They did the same practice tests, but they didn't set any goals or track their progress specifically.
And the results. Did the goal setting make a difference?
It really did. The group that set goals and tracked their progress showed significantly bigger improvements in how fast and accurately they could recall multiplication facts compared to the group that didn't set goals.
That's pretty clear cut then. Even for something like memorizing math facts, that act of setting a target and seeing your progress makes a real difference.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? No matter what you're trying to learn or achieve, that structure helps.
Definitely. Okay, let's switch gears now from school kids and math facts to the workplace. Stress, well-being. We have something called a realist review on mindfulness programs at work, MBPs.
That's right. And a realist review is interesting because it doesn't just ask, do these programs work? It tries to dig deeper into how and why they work, or maybe why they don't work in specific situations. It's about context and mechanisms.
Okay, sounds more nuanced than just a yes-no answer.
Yeah.
This one looked at 75 studies. That's a lot.
It is. And the overall picture suggests that, yes, these workplace mindfulness programs can help people handle stress better and improve well-being.
How? What are the mechanisms they identified?
They found a few key things. These programs seem to boost self-awareness and emotional regulation. They foster more acceptance and compassion, both for oneself and others. They can also create a sense that it's actually okay, even permitted, to take time for self-care at work. Plus, they can give a sense of personal growth and, interestingly, a feeling of making progress toward well-being goals.
It sounds like it's not just about the program itself. The workplace environment matters hugely, right?
Oh, absolutely crucial. The review really stressed this. For mindfulness programs to be truly effective, people need to feel psychologically safe. Safe enough to actually engage with self-care. Safe enough to maybe admit they're struggling without fearing it'll make them look bad or unproductive.
Yeah, I can see how worrying about appearances could stop people from really participating.
Totally. And the review brings in this theory, the conservation of resources theory, COR.
Okay, what's that about?
Basically, it suggests we all try to protect our resources, time, energy, emotional capacity, and acquire more. So when employees consider joining a mindfulness program, they're kind of weighing the potential resource gain, like less stress, against the resource investment, like the time it takes.
So if the environment feels risky or unsupportive, the perceived cost of investing time and vulnerability might seem too high.
Exactly. Psychological safety acts like a door opener, as the review put it. Without it, engagement stays superficial. They even identified specific links like, if the company gives official time off for training, people feel permitted to prioritize it and engage more deeply.
Right.
Or if the mindfulness exercises offered are short and easy to fit into a busy day, more people actually do them. Context really matters.
It shows that just rolling out a program isn't enough. It needs to be embedded in a supportive culture.
Precisely. Okay, now let's pivot again maybe to something a bit more internal, personal growth. We've got a study looking at how feeling like you're growing relates to actual development, specifically something called ego development.
Ego development, like how our understanding of ourselves and the world matures.
Yeah, basically how we make sense of things, how complex our perspective is. So the study asks, when you feel like you're growing personally, does that feeling actually line up with measurable changes in that deeper ego development?
Interesting question. How do they look into that?
They did two studies. First, they looked at healthcare professionals. They measured their self-reported personal growth, their life satisfaction, and their ego development level. The second study followed university students over their first year, looking at the same things, personal growth, well-being, ego development, both at the start and then later on, to see how things changed.
And what came out of it? Is feeling like you're growing the same as actually, developing?
Well, the results were a bit mixed, actually. In the first study with the professionals, feeling personal growth was related to both life satisfaction and ego development. But it seemed like only reaching the very highest stages of ego development uniquely predicted that feeling of growth beyond just being satisfied with life.
Okay, so related, but maybe not a perfect match. What about the students over time? Did feeling growth early on lead to more development later?
That's the really interesting part. At the beginning, yes, students reporting more personal growth also tended to have higher well-being and ego development. But, and this is key, how much personal growth they reported at the start did not predict changes in their ego development or well-being a year later.
Wow. So just focusing on or feeling like you're growing doesn't automatically translate into actual developmental leaps over time. Why not?
The researchers suggest a difference between what they call active development, the actual, sometimes difficult engagement with life's challenges that pushes us to grow, and intentional development, which is more about consciously thinking and talking about growth.
Oh,
So that self-reported feeling of personal growth might align more with the intention to grow or the focus on it, rather than the active, effortful process that truly drives deeper changes in ego development.
it's like wanting to be fit versus actually doing the workouts. The intention is good, but the action causes the change.
It's a great analogy, exactly. Which leads us nicely into a really practical tool for turning intention into action. SMART goals. We've got a couple of sources on this.
Right. SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Most people have probably encountered this. Let's quickly break down each part based on our sources.
Okay, specific. Be super clear on the what. What exactly needs doing? Who's involved? When? And critically, why is this important? Get granular.
Makes sense? Then measurable. How will you know you've done it? How do you track progress? Our sources mention quantitative stuff like numbers, costs, times.
Right, but also qualitative things like feedback, surveys. And even if direct measurement is tricky, they say just discussing what success looks like and how you might measure it is valuable itself.
Good point. Next, achievable. Is it actually possible? Do you have the skills, the resources? Is the effort worth the reward? It should stretch you, but not be impossible.
Definitely. Then relevant. Does this goal actually matter in the bigger picture? Does it align with overall objectives? Why this, why now needs to connect.
And finally, time-bound. Give it a deadline. Creates urgency, helps focus. Needs to be a realistic time frame, of course.
And the sources give some great examples, right? Like reducing emergency call dispatch times, resolving complaints collaboratively by a certain date, cutting overtime, developing training with measurable outcomes, improving fuel economy.
Yeah, very concrete examples. And there's that template too, asking specific questions for each letter S, M, A, R, T to really guide you in crafting a solid goal. It encourages you, the listener, to think about a project you have right now and apply these principles.
And another resource from Sam H.A. echoes this framework too. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound, applying it to project objectives, like getting formal agreements signed.
So SMART is a really solid framework for making things happen.
It really is. Now, let's circle back to motivation, but specifically at work again. We have a study from Oman looking at intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation among university administrative staff.
Okay, so intrinsic is the internal drive, enjoying the work itself, feeling it's meaningful. Extrinsic is the external stuff, pay, bonuses, benefits.
Exactly. And this study looked at how these two types relate to employee engagement. They found both were positively linked to engagement, which maybe isn't surprising.
Right, you'd expect both to matter.
But what was a bit more surprising was that extrinsic motivation, the external rewards, actually showed a stronger relationship with engagement in this specific group compared to intrinsic motivation.
Oh, interesting. That kind of goes against the grain sometimes, where intrinsic motivation is often seen as the holy grail. Any thoughts on why that might be the case here?
Well, it could be context-specific. Maybe in that particular setting or for that group of employees, factors like salary security and clear rewards are especially powerful drivers of feeling committed and engaged. It reminds us that motivation isn't one size fits all.
Yeah, good point. How do they measure these things?
They use survey statements. For intrinsic, things like, my university's mission makes me feel my work is important. For extrinsic, questions about salary adequacy, bonuses, things like that.
So the practical implication for companies
Is really understanding what motivates your specific workforce. Don't assume. Identify what drives engagement for them and make sure your reward and recognition systems align. And making sure employees see how their work fits into the bigger vision is still important too.
Right. It's about finding the right mix.
Exactly. Okay, just to round things off, let's briefly mention a couple of other sources touching on stress and well-being, since they're so tightly linked to motivation and achievement.
Go ahead.
One was a review on glaucoma management. It noted the link between chronic stress and elevated cortisol, the stress hormone. And interestingly, it mentioned some evidence suggesting mindfulness meditation might help lower eye pressure in glaucoma patients.
Wow. Okay. a potential physical link there.
Yeah. And then another study focused on medical students. Unsurprisingly, maybe, it found a significant number experience quite high levels of stress, physical, academic, social, and many reported poor well-being overall.
It really highlights the need for the kind of strategies we've been talking about,
Mm,
especially in demanding fields.
absolutely. And we also had a quick mention of guidelines for managing anxiety, just reminding us of the broader mental health context.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up,
Hmm.
we've covered a lot of ground. From that core achievement motivation drive,
To the practical power of setting smart goals. We looked at mindfulness at work, its potential, but also the importance of the right environment.
and that nuanced relationship between feeling like you're growing and actual deeper development, plus what motivates us at work and the real impact of stress.
It's clear that all these things, that inner drive, the goals we set, how we care for our well-being, what motivates us, they're all deeply interconnected, aren't they? They really shape our experience, personally and professionally.
They really do. It leaves you thinking.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Considering all these different pieces, your own drive, your goals, your well-being practices, your motivations, what's maybe one small thing, one intentional change you could make starting today to move just a little bit closer to what success and fulfillment mean for you?